Banking and the dollar are a confidence game. Confidence, easily lost, hard to win back. And they're doing a hell of a job making your average citizen not have confidence in the system. The other day when SVB went bankrupt and then was subsequently not bailed out by the taxpayer, that day is a day that a lot of people realize they're actually loaning the bank money. If you ask your average person or your neighbor, your relatives, you say, "Hey, how's the banking system work? How is money created? What happens when you give your money to a bank? Is it secure? Yada yada yada." They will probably not know the true answers. That over 250,000 isn't insured. They can take up to 99 years to pay you back. FDIC can. So this realization is coming to people real time. On top of the fact that the Biden administration is doing things that would make the system collapse even faster. So you got to wonder, hey, are they doing this intentionally to consolidate the banking system, to make small banks consolidate into big banks because they're choosing winners and losers? And if you don't believe me, listen to what Janet Yellen said yesterday in testimony. I've got two videos for you that are absolutely unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable because they're saying it openly. They're saying it to your face. The question is, do you believe them? Because a lot of people think, this is conspiracy theory. You're worrying. Why would you worry people? The banking system's fine, yada, yada, yada. These are the people in charge. So if these are the people in charge and these are the answers they give, you got to be a little worried, my humble opinion. So let's listen.
Will the deposits in every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of their size, be fully insured now? Are they fully recovered? Every bank, every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of the size of the deposit, will they get the same treatment that SVBP just got or Signature Bank just got?
A bank only gets that treatment if a majority of the FDIC board, a supermajority of the Fed board, and I, in consultation with the president, determine that the failure to protect uninsured depositors would create systemic risk and significant economic and financial consequences.
So what is your plan?
So what did she say there? That's a lot of word salad to say. There's a board of trustees that picks winners and losers. If your bank goes insolvent, which is a risk in capitalism, that's how the banking system works. A lot of people just don't realize that. So they pick winners and losers. I talked about this the other day. There's certain politically connected people, including the governor of California, who had money in SVB Bank. So, crony capitalism 101. They go to the board and they say, maybe this one has systemic risk because their friends have money there. And these little banks in Oklahoma, who gives a crap?
That determination.
Right. So what is your plan to keep large depositors from moving their funds out of community banks into the big banks? We have seen the mergers of banks over the past decade. I'm concerned you're about to accelerate that by encouraging anyone who has a large deposit in a community bank to say, we're not going to make you whole, but if you go to one of our preferred banks, we will make you whole at that point.
Look, I mean, that's certainly not something that we're encouraging.
That is happening right now.
Look at the way she answered that question. She has no idea. She doesn't know what she's doing. They're shooting from the hip. They're reactionary. And yes, when she says there's certain banks that have systemic risk, therefore the government will backstop them, JP Morgan Chase, the big ones, why would anybody hold money at a community bank? Because the government treats big banks differently. She openly is saying that right now.
That is happening because depositors are concerned about the bank failures that have happened and whether or not other banks could also
No, it's happening
And
because you're fully insured no matter what the amount is if you're in a big bank. You're not fully insured if you're in a community bank.
Well, you're not fully insured. And
You were at Signature, and it just barely met that threshold. You were at Signature.
well, we felt that there was a serious risk of contagion that could have brought down and triggered runs on many banks. And that's something, given that our judgment is that the banking system overall is safe and sound, depositors should have confidence in the system, and we took these actions.
So there's a
to
special
discourage
assessment that's been done
contagion.
on community banks in my state and all banks across the country. Was there any discussion that that special assessment would only apply
Meaning they have to pay into FDIC, these small community banks. A special assessment for these small community
to
banks.
the larger banks, or was it always assumed the special assessment would cover every bank, including rural banks in my state?
I think, I'm not certain what the rules are around that. That's for the FDIC to determine.
It has been reported publicly that SVB had a large number of Chinese investors that are there, including some that were companies directly connected to the Chinese Communist Party. Will those individuals, companies, entities, and investors that are Chinese investors be made whole based on assessments in my banks in Oklahoma? So what I'm asking is, will my banks in Oklahoma pay a special assessment to be able to make Chinese investors whole from Silicon Valley Bank?
Uninsured investors will be made whole in that bank, and I suppose that could include foreign depositors, but I don't believe there's any legal basis to discriminate among uninsured.
I get it, but I'm just saying my community banks are going to pay this additional fee. It is always fascinating to me as well, the conversation that taxpayers are being made whole in this, that taxpayers are not going to have any kind of consequence on this. I'm sure my bankers are going to be very excited to know they no longer pay tax.
Yeah. Um, as he was saying, did that spur confidence? They just parrot these lines like, people should have confidence that the banking system is sound. Lady, you just had to bail out a bank with taxpayer funds. George Gammon does a great video on that, on how it is taxpayer funds. Um, and it will be assessed to the taxpayer through inflation. But that testimony did not exhibit any confidence. And what does that do but create runs on the bank? Because she is openly saying that the government will backstop banks that have systemic risk, meaning massive deposits, and they will not for the small banks. So, what are you to do? It turns honest people into suckers, as I've always said. What are you to do if you have your deposit in a small bank? And they're really not addressing the massive issues. And in this testimony as well, they talked about Social Security. I want to
reality in the finance.
talk about so that this is I can't remember his name, Congressman, Senator, asking Janet Yellen specifically about the numbers, when it comes to Social Security. And this is on the back of France just lowering their retirement age or raising it rather, from 62 to 64. And just Google what's going on in France today. People are rioting. Not good. But it's, again, you can't virtue signal your way out of math. So let's listen to what she has to say on this.
Senator Cassidy.
Madam Secretary, the president keeps saying he does not wish to have cuts in social. Is he aware that under current law, when the program goes broke in 9 years, that there will be a 24% benefit cut for those who are current recipients? Is he aware of that?
Well, it's clear that Social Security.
But is he, I apologize for interruption, but I have limited time.
Dodge.
Is the president aware that when social goes broke in 9 years, under current law, there's a 24% cut?
By the way, that is incredibly generous timeline. Comes from the CBO that 9 years is based off of 2% inflation, not runaway inflation, because guess what is matched to inflation? Social Security. Guess what's not matched to inflation? Your pay. So, They tax, I think it's 12% for Social Security. So, yeah, I think 9 years is rather generous. I'm thinking more like 7 or 6.
And benefits for people who are currently receiving.
If we don't do anything about it, I think that's about right. But
Okay, let me
the
ask.
president wants to strengthen Social Security
In
and
the
make sure that doesn't
$4.5
happen.
trillion of taxes the president has proposed, are any of those taxes going to shore up Social Security? I actually know that answer. The answer is of the $4.5 trillion in taxes he has proposed, not a dime is going to shore up Social Security. Does the president know personally anybody who is...
By the way, you see see down on the bottom there? He's saying he's proposing 4.5 trillion taxes. But what does it say at the bottom there? It says Biden's $6.8 trillion budget. Again, people are starting to realize that the 98%, the 99% who aren't paying attention are like, wait a second, my money's not safe in a bank. Wait a second, we have inflation and he's proposing 4.5 trillion in taxes. He's raising taxes. They have a record of tax income coming into the government, and yet we're still overspending at drastic amounts. I don't see this ending well. They're correct. It's not going to.
dependent upon Social Security, and if their benefits are cut by 24%, they will slide into poverty. It's hard for you to know, so I'll give you a
Sure
pass
that
on
the
that.
president knows many people on Social Security.
Then why doesn't the president care?
He cares very deeply.
Then where is his plan?
He stands ready to work with
That's a
Congress
lie,
to address.
because when a bipartisan group of senators has repeatedly requested to meet with him about social, so that somebody who is a current beneficiary will not see her benefits cut by 24%, we have not heard anything on our request. And we've made multiple requests to meet with the president. Now, you can't comment on that, I realize that, but that is a fact. And if you've been told to say he stands ready to meet, I will tell you there's absolutely no evidence, because we have not gotten our meeting.
Well, I believe the president does stand ready to work
Well,
with
again,
Congress
empirically, that is not
to address
true.
this issue.
Now, the president in the past has proposed increasing taxes on those making over $400,000 to pay for it. Although he's not made that formally, he has said that in the past. Now, he's also proposed to tax them more to pay for Medicare, and also to close the debt and deficit. So what would the rates have to be on that 2% of Americans who earn over $400K in order to do Medicare, the debt and deficit, and also to address our 75-year shortfall in Social Security? Do you have any sense of what the rates would have to be?
Well, he has proposed explicit increases in
Yeah,
tax rates
the rates
on.
have to be like 5,000%. You know, if they've done the math on this, like if they taxed all billionaires at 100%, it would run the government for like half a year. It's a spending problem. I'll say it over and over again. It's a spending problem. In Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, look at the amount that they take up of the budget. It's about 2/3. It's about 2/3. So without reform, they're going away. Yeah. Raising taxes on the wealthy. You'd have to tax them for 5,000 years at 100% to get anywhere close to paying for it.
Very high income.
But do you think it's realistic that he can pay for Medicare, debt and deficit, and also address a 75% shortfall in social, a 75-year shortfall in social, by only taxing, by only going, the only thing he's going to do is to lay higher taxes on those who make more than 2%. I'm sure there's a projection of how much those rates would have to be. Can you tell us what those rates would have to be to do everything he is saying?
I can't tell you that, but I do know that he's put on the table many proposals that would raise very substantial revenues.
But of that 4.5 trillion, not a dime is going to social. And if you cannot tell me, I presume that they've not actually modeled what those rates would have to be, which tells me that he's actually not been developing his plan. Now, this is incredibly worrisome from a president who should be sympathetic with someone who, under current law, is going to get a 24% cut
The
in her
president
benefits.
is completely committed to protecting seniors who rely on Social
Now,
Security.
if we doubled our debt to GDP ratio, just theoretically, if you will, and aside from our conversation, if we doubled that GDP to debt ratio, what effect would that have on the economy?
So right now, and in the president's budget proposal,
Now, I'm asking you just the theoretical independently of the budget proposal.
if we were to double the debt to GDP ratio,
Yes.
I don't see why we would need
But
to
if we
double.
did, just you're an economist, if we did, what would be the effect upon the economy?
Well, it would tend to raise net interest costs.
Would it be a negative effect on the economy? Of course it would be.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, of course it would be. We've actually modeled this. For the president to do nothing, let's assume that we cast aside current law and we just double the national debt, and that's what it would do. It would have a devastating effect upon the economy. CBO says they cannot model the deleterious effects that would occur because of that.
So what he's saying is that's how much Social Security is going to cost us, because more and more people are retiring, less and less people are working. You cannot tax your way out of this. You have to reform it. I still don't think anybody's going to reform Social Security. They're going to ride this because it works. It works to virtue signal about this. You want to throw grandma on the street and all the stuff that they talk about. You want to bail out China. You want to bail out Wall Street, which is what Republicans are. And we're coming up against the debt ceiling, by the way. I think it's June. And Republicans are saying they won't budge on it. But Democrats are saying Republicans want to pay China because they're a bondholder and Wall Street because they're bondholders, pensions, etc., before they pay for Social Security. So they itemize in order who gets paid first. Here's something to think about. If you don't pay bondholders first, in other words, you default on bondholders and not just recipients of Social Security, then you will not be able to take out another loan. And the United States relies on that. So we run a deficit every year. So either you won't be able to take out another loan, or the interest rate will be so restrictive because you'll get downgraded on how creditworthy you are because you're not paying your debts. Now, Social Security is not necessarily a debt, it's a promise, but it must be reformed. But which one's worse? If you don't pay bondholders, then Social Security is going away. It for sure is going away. Why? Because we run a deficit. Like I just said, it says 6.8 trillion. They're budgeting in for 4.5 trillion of taxes. A lot of that deficit spending goes to Social Security as it is. So you got to pay bondholders first in the Ponzi scheme that we have set up for ourselves.
We have a situation where the president has not proposed a single plan. He has turned down multiple requests for meetings with senators, and our options are a 24% cut on a person currently receiving, doubling our national debt, which CBO says cannot be modeled, and you agree that would be a deleterious effect. And he's not modeled the tax rates that would be required if he just wants to raise taxes.
Look, what I know is that the president is committed to Social Security. He stands ready to work with Congress, and he's put on
I'm
the
out of
table
time. I don't mean to be rude, but
many
since I've had
tax
multiple
proposals.
requests on a bipartisan basis to meet with him and he's turned everyone down, that rings hollow.
My colleague's out of time, and I would just caution colleagues, we got collegiality in the.
Yeah, don't say she's lying. That's what the guy says. Does that spark confidence in you? There are people that want to fix this, but fiat to zero, folks. It's going to happen. And the reason that this isn't brought up and people virtue signal and say we're going to pay China and Wall Street before, because it works. It gets votes. And it'll get votes for as long as it needs to until people wake up, right? Until they see the pain, they're getting their Social Security check, but it buys them nothing. They'll keep demanding more and more and more. And It's just math, unfortunately. I don't think Social Security should have ever been a thing. If you do the math on what you were taxed over your working life, and you had put that instead of in Social Security, you put it in the S&P 500, you would be far better off. Big surprise there. And yet the government pretends it's yours and yada, 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 and you're owed it and all this kind of stuff. Great. Then let me opt out. Let me opt out of paying for it. I don't want it. I don't want you to tax me on it since it's mine. And as I've said many times, it's not yours. It's a transfer payment. So then we're going to get into the whole generational argument, because the older people now, the wealthiest among us in aggregate, meaning the baby boomers who are going to get Social Security, are getting paid from a generation who don't make nearly as much in purchasing power as they did when they were our age. And it says, I will never get Social Security. It's a transfer payment, so young people are paying into it. And as it draws down and less money is in there, then the chances, the younger you are, the chances of you getting Social Security are way lower. So we're going to start having generational fights on this one. But what Social Security did was give this false sense of security that if you pay into this thing, hence why it's called security, Social Security, it's not secure. There's not enough money in there. Just the way it is, unfortunately. And I think we should abolish it, moonlight it, and somehow make the old people who are relying on it now whole, and get it, turn it off, essentially. Put an expiration date on it. I'm sure that'll piss a lot of people off, but I would much rather put my money in the S&P 500 and control it myself than hand it to the government and say, please take care of me over retirement. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Her testimony did not inspire any confidence to me. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.